In this job, you become a professional ghost. You sit high up in that cab and you watch the world happen below you. You see arguments in cars, you see kids waving from bridges, and you see 1,000 broken down vehicles on the hard shoulder. You learn to ignore them. You have to. You have 30 tons on the back, a tachograph clock ticking down your legal driving hours, and a transport manager breathing down your neck. You cannot stop for everyone. But one night in November, I broke every single company rule in the book because I looked out my passenger window and I saw a ghost of my own. It was 2 in the morning. I was hauling a full load of timber across the A66 over the Pennines. If you know the A66, you know it is absolutely brutal in the winter. Pitch black, the wind howling right off the moors, and it was pissing down with freezing sideways rain. I was doing about 40 miles an hour, fighting the crosswinds, just trying to keep the Arctic in a straight line. Then my headlights caught a flicker of orange in a desolate little lay-by. Hazard lights, barely visible through the driving rain. As I got closer, I saw a tiny, battered old Nissan Micra. And standing next to the back wheel, getting absolutely battered by the storm, was an elderly bloke. He must have been pushing 80. Flat cap soaked through. Thin little jacket that belonged in the summer. He was leaning on a wheel brace, trying to undo a lug nut, but he had absolutely no strength left. I passed him. I actually drove straight past because my taco was screaming at me. I was already running late, but as I looked in my near side mirror, my stomach completely dropped. The way he was standing, the way his shoulders were hunched against the freezing wind. He looked exactly like my late dad. I hit the brakes. I pulled my 40-ton rig over onto the verge, put the hazard lights on, and grabbed my high-vis jacket. I grabbed a heavy fleece from behind my seat, climbed down into the mud, and walked back towards the little car. When I got to him, he was shivering so violently he could barely hold the metal wrench. His hands were completely blue. "All right, mate," I shouted over the wind. "Let me take over. You get in the car." He looked up at me. His face was pale, and there were tears mixing with the rain on his cheeks. "It won't budge," he said. His voice was shaking. "I've been here an hour. I can't get it off." I told him not to worry. I put the fleece over his shoulders and knelt down in the puddle. I got the wheel off. But when I opened his boot to get the spare tire, my heart sank. The spare was completely flat, bald as a badger, and holding absolutely zero air. The car was not going anywhere. I walked round to the passenger window. He had rolled it down. "Listen, mate," I said. "The spare is dead. I'm going to have to call the highways agency to recover you. It might take 2 hours in this weather." When I said that, the old bloke completely broke down. He put his head on the steering wheel and started sobbing. "I can't wait 2 hours," he cried. "I can't." I asked him what was going on. Why was an 80-year-old man driving across the Pennines in a storm at 2 in the morning? He looked at me, his eyes completely red. "It's my Mary," he said. "The hospital in Carlisle just rang. They said she won't make it through the night. They told me to come now." I stood there in the freezing rain, completely frozen. His wife of 50 years was fading away in a hospital bed 30 miles down the road, and he was stuck in a freezing lay-by. Now let me explain something about UK haulage. Company policy is 0 passengers. You are not insured for it. If the boss finds out you have an unauthorized person in the cab, it is gross misconduct. You are sacked on the spot. I looked at my tachograph. I looked at the dark, empty road. And then I looked at this desperate old bloke clutching his flat cap, waiting for a recovery truck that was never going to make it in time. "Right," I said. "Lock the car, grab your wallet. You are coming with me." He looked confused, but he did not argue. I practically carried him up the steps into the cab of my massive Scania. I strapped him into the passenger seat, turned the cab heater up to the absolute maximum, and poured him a cup of hot tea from my thermos. He sat there, gripping the warm mug with both hands, shaking like a leaf. I dropped the Lorry into gear, pulled out onto the A66 and put my foot down. "What's your name, mate?" I asked him. "Arthur," he said quietly. "Well, Arthur," I told him, "I'm not supposed to have you in here. So if we see the police, you just duck down, all right?" He managed a tiny, weak smile. I drove that Lorry like an absolute saint. Smooth, steady, but as fast as the limiter would legally allow me. For 30 miles, Arthur sat next to me in the glow of the dashboard lights, telling me about Mary, how they met at a dance in 1962, how she always complained about his driving. He was terrified, mate, absolutely terrified of arriving too late. We hit Carlisle at 3:15 in the morning. I completely ignored the HGV restrictions. I drove a massive 40-ton Arctic right into the hospital grounds. I pulled up directly outside the accident and emergency sliding doors, blocking 3 ambulance bays. I jumped out, ran round the front, and helped Arthur climb down from the cab. A security guard came running out, waving his arms, telling me I couldn't park there. I pointed at Arthur. "Get this man a wheelchair," I shouted. "His wife is in the ICU." The guard took one look at Arthur's face, stopped shouting, and ran to get a chair. Arthur turned to me before he went through those doors. He grabbed my massive, oily hand with both of his freezing ones. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The look in his eyes said everything. I got back in my cab, reversed out of the hospital, and parked up in a nearby industrial estate. I was way over my legal driving hours. My tachograph was flashing red. The next morning, my transport manager rang me absolutely furious. He asked why the tracker showed I had diverted to a hospital and blown my hours. I told him the exact truth. I said, "Sack me if you want, Dave." But I couldn't leave him. There was a long silence on the phone. Dave just sighed. He said, "I'll log it as an emergency mechanical diversion. Don't ever do it again." I never found out if Arthur made it in time to say goodbye to Mary. I really hope he did. But every time I drive the A66, I look at that exact lay-by and I think of my own dad. Here's the lesson I want to leave you with today. We live in a world that is moving too fast. We are all obsessed with schedules, being on time, and looking at our phones. But there is an entire generation of older people out there who are struggling. If you see an elderly person looking confused in a supermarket, or struggling with a heavy bag, or broken down on the side of the road, stop. Take 5 minutes out of your busy life. Be a human being, because one day that is going to be you standing in the rain, and you will pray that someone is brave enough to pull over. If this story touched you, drop a like on the video. It genuinely helps the channel. Subscribe for more real stories from the UK tarmac, and let me know in the comments who was the stranger that helped you when you needed it most. Look after each other out there. Keep the shiny side up.